Like, it's weird to say indie comics or mainstream comics because they're all comics. They're like,
Right.
if they're in the shop, they're mainstream as far as I'm concerned. But
Right.
yeah. Also, let's not forget that you worked with someone named, I think it's pronounced Chorp Zadorsky. I'm not entirely sure how it goes.
Come on and visit for any occasion. Don't keep patting down waiting. Comics and conversation. Keep the conversation moving along. Keep reading comics, keep your local store strong. If it's hard, then it's a job for the challengers. Comics and conversation, y'all.
From Challengers Comics and Conversation in Chicago, this is Contest of Challengers, a comics industry business podcast with Patrick Brower.
I have immediately derailed our conversation by looking up Ghost Rider stats, and I think I was wrong. I thought Danny Ketch was in the Forest Hills Cemetery, but it looks like it might be Cypress Hills. And now, you know what?
Yeah,
I don't care.
Too.
It
doesn't
matter. I know, and I figure between the two of us, one of us should know this, if not both. But anyway, so I am joined on the line with superstar. That's right, I said it. Marvel editor WIL MOSS. WIL MOSS is the Dal Bush of this episode, and I mean that in the nicest way possible, as Dal is on vacation, and I knew Dal was going to be gone, so I immediately started reaching out to Will. And Will, we've known each other for 15, 17 years, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably 2000, 2001. I started coming to Graham Cracker,
okay,
so longer than that. Yeah.
21 years. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I have terrible memory, as evidenced by not knowing which cemetery Ghost Rider is from. So we can't rely on my memory for any of this. But I wanted to talk to you, because I haven't talked to you in quite a while. And to my recollection, you've only ever made it to Challengers once because you don't live in Chicago. And that's right. Totally understandable. But also because you are one of the best in the business as far as we're concerned. And without jumping too far into your career journey, a couple of years ago when the editor-in-chief position opened up at Marvel, both Dal and I were begging for Marvel to do, and we were very vocal about this online, about it being a joint EIC with you and Sana Amanat as the two EICs, leading Marvel into the future. And we stand by that. And
oh boy, I would have been relying on Sana. I would have been pulling Sana down. She could handle that no problem, but I would be the bane of her existence if something like that happened.
I mean, I think that's one of the reasons you're so good at what you do, because of how self-deprecating you are. But it literally, this is not a lie in any way. You are responsible for all of my favorite Marvel titles.
Thanks, man. That's really nice. Yeah.
So let's back up. Let's hear about WIL MOSS, the comic fan. What got you into comics in the first place? How old were you? Stuff like that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, all the way back, first comics I remember are some Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like the Archie Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I got those as a little kid.
Okay.
But it's two older cousins of mine are deep into Marvel comics, and they pulled me into the X-Men specifically. They got me familiar with the characters, so we talk about them, and then they got me started reading them back when Jim Lee and Chris Claremont, did X-Men #1. That's actually when I started reading, that period of time where they did all the new #1s for the X books. That got me in, and been reading ever since. Been regular buyer. A lot of people said they drop off in college for a couple years, but that never happened with me. I spent all those years buying comics from you.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you dropped off in college, we would have never met, and this conversation would never be happening.
Yeah.
I think it's great that you got in when you did, because that was kind of a renaissance, and it was really when the mainstream comics were exploding, and so many titles, and of course so many gimmicks as well. But I think it's great that you have a little bit more of a pedigree than a lot of current readers, and I think I'm a solid decade, if not more, older than you, but it just shows that you've been in it. You're kind of a lifer, which
Yeah.
I want to
I have
say,
no other skills.
neither do I, Will.
Yeah.
If this goes away, what do we do?
Right.
I mean, you at least have a journalism background, right? I mean, you could.
Oh yeah, that's a great industry. That's equally healthy. Yeah.
Next, we're going to learn that you used to own a compact disc pressing factory in your spare time or something.
Right.
I got all this telephone wire. I think it's going to make a comeback. It's going to be great.
Yeah, no, I definitely was glad I got in when I did. It was a good period for the X books, and then I was just, I was an event guy, I guess, because I got into DC Comics when Death of Superman happened a couple years later. That kind of like opened the floodgates for me on DC, and then a couple years after that, I branched out from those two when Image picked up when they started publishing Bone and Strangers in Paradise. I remember those two came out through Image, and I saw those, and then that kind of led me to read stuff beyond superhero stuff. So, yeah, it was a good time to start.
To this day, I read everything Terry Moore does.
Yeah,
he's so good. He's so good.
He's brilliant. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, doing Parker Girls now, and I love that everything is in the same world, but not necessarily immediately connected.
Yeah.
And it was I just forgot his last name, John, the guy who does Steeple, and I told you my memory's bad. I'm forgetting everything. Especially his British boarding school detective series. Anyway, that dude had a really great quote where somebody had said, "Hey, like, does this new book you're doing, is it in the same universe as the other ones?" And he said, "Yeah, everything I do is in the same world, but it's like you're in the same world as Charlize Theron. You're never going to run into her,
right,
but she exists in your world."
Yeah.
So these are all in the same world. They just don't interact.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah. How does it feel? Does it make you feel especially old to know that we are like a month away from DC's 30th anniversary of the Death of Superman with all their special edition comics coming out?
Yeah, sure. Right. I mean, that happens all the time now at this age, right? I mean, like there's all these anniversaries for things. It's just like, stop it. I don't want to know. Stop reminding me that I'm old by all these numbers. But yeah.
It's particularly depressing for me because I was already doing this job when that happened the first time. It's like, I didn't go anywhere. How are you like bringing this back? It's still here. And I'm like, I vividly remember the anniversary issue of Superman 75 because it was literally one of the worst days I ever had in comic book retail.
I bet.
Yeah. On top of
we were on the front lines.
Yeah, but not only that, this was at the time the owner of the shops that I worked at had the inkling this was going to be a big deal, so he brokered a deal with a friend or somebody out in a different city to get the majority of the books from them. Mm-hmm. So we weren't supposed to order anything at that time. We were still getting the books from Capital City. Mm-hmm. So we weren't really supposed to order any because we had a bunch coming from somewhere else, but I still ordered like 25 copies just to make sure we had enough for subs and regulars. And of course, you know where this is going. Of course, that deal fell through. So those, hundreds and hundreds of copies we're supposed to be getting for the chain. And I mean, I say chain, but it was maybe 3 stores back then. But anyway, we didn't get any of them. So all I had were those 25, and I had people wanting to buy every single copy for like, I'll pay $25 a piece. I'm like, no, we're not doing that. That's not what this is about.
But man.
Just
I can imagine.
The constant phone calls asking for things that you just can't get people. It's heartbreaking because all you want to do is put comics in people's hands. Nobody, I said nobody, but what I mean is most people calling didn't care about the content. Mm-hmm. They just wanted the widget, the gimmick, they
thought they could turn it around and sell it for $500.
And what do those books go for now? A couple of dollars, maybe.
My memory of that speaks to just how key your profession is, guys, in your role, because I was probably 11 when that came out, and I had been reading all the parts up to that. I got and so I went to the store when it came out, and it was a little baseball card store that also sold comics, like in Franklin,
Yeah.
Tennessee, this small little place. And I was always, the only guy in there. But that day, there was like, 30 like grown adults like in there that I'd never seen before in my life. It was chaos. But because I was a regular there, the guy that I behind the counter had saved a copy for me. So I remember him
Oh man,
walking in,
that's great.
getting the copy, and all these like grown men just like looking like, oh, what, why is this kid getting a copy, and thanks to that comic shop owner,
Because
I
this
got a copy.
kid is a reader, and
Right,
that's what
right.
we want. We want
Yeah, yeah.
readers. So you grew up in Tennessee.
Yes, from Tennessee. Mhm.
And what made you choose to head to Chicago for, was it college or grad school? What were you?
Yeah, it was college. I went to DePaul University for undergrad, and I don't know. It's kind of lost to time why I ended up in Chicago. A friend of mine from high school, I think he was applying there, and so I kind of took that lead. I liked Chicago a lot. I've been there a couple times already, and ended up there in Chicago. Yeah, and then found every comic shop in the city, and ended up like at Graham Cracker's Best. It was a great when you guys were in that downtown location. I was up in Lincoln Park.
Because
So
I was going to say that's
go
not
downtown
close.
every week.
Okay, because that's not close to DePaul.
Right. No, it was,
So
I love that ride into the city. The Chicago has the great elevated subway, so I still can think of the view of the city as it would get closer in, and then going down to the Loop. It was nice. It was great.
and you know what?
And then you opened Challenger after I left.
Right.
I'll never forgive you for that, because Challenger's is such a great store. But like you
Thank
said,
you.
I've only been able to get there once.
Well, sure, because you graduated school and then
Yes.
wanted to do something, wanted to have a career, and so you how did you from there? Okay, you have your degree. After you got it, did you immediately move to New York? Did you think, hey, comics are what I want to be doing? Like, at what point were comics a legitimate career potential for you based off of the degree you had?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I had an English major, which still isn't really proved to be worth anything. But like, I got a journalism minor, and so I was working on my college paper, and then after college, I moved back home to Nashville and started working for some papers there. And at some point, I had like the light bulb idea of like, I could apply these similar kind of skills in comics. It took me a while to come to that realization, but then once I did, it just started. I mean, that took a while too. I mean, it was. I would go to a couple conventions. Like, went to San Diego one year and had reached out to people ahead of time, editors at different companies, and everybody in comics is so nice and open. I mean, I met with all kinds of people. Diana Schutz at Dark Horse.
Oh yeah,
she gave me a lot of
the best reputation in comics, right there.
Yeah, she's amazing. She's a phenomenal editor, and then she just really gave me a fair amount of time to pick her brain, and I was always grateful for that. And then, I mean, so I knew that I wanted to work in comics. I eventually figured out that applying for jobs from Nashville wasn't going to give me an actual
leg up
chance. Yeah, so I saved up. I had some money saved up. Moved to New York for a year to see if I could make it up there and get a job at Marvel or DC. Took a little longer than that. Worked at some newspapers up here, and then eventually saw on The Beat that some DC assistant editors had recently left. So I just cold emailed Matt Adelson and Mike Martz and asked them if they had any job interview slots open, and that led to my job at DC.
Wow, man, it's I don't recall if there was ever like a ceremonial goodbye when you were leaving. I don't think you are a very well-mannered individual, and you might have said like,
Sure.
hey, I'm graduating, I'm leaving, I'm moving on.
Right.
And we might have been like, oh, that sucks, come visit us, or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm sure you did.
I had to have closed out the hold file. Like,
yeah, that's true.
Nothing else.
That's true.
Yeah. I hope it's not still there, because if so, that's going to be...
There's a lot of books there. There's probably a lot of great books, though, and probably a lot of, who knows. But, I mean, one of the highest compliments I can pay you is that you were always an ideal subscriber. You were never caused problems, and that's not rare, but I want to say literally half of most subscription accounts have extra attention needed to them, and you were never that. But after Okay, so when did you graduate?
2003. So
Okay.
so then I think I think it was 2007 or 2008 that I started at DC.
Okay. You know what's weird? So the downtown store was at 69 East. Wait, no, it was at 77 East Madison. And then, no, wait. I can't even remember numbers. It was at 69 East Madison. Then it moved to 77 East Madison. And while I have specific memories of you being in the new store, they must be false because we didn't get into that spot until later in 2005. So you must have
Huh.
been already gone by then. So see, this goes back to the beginning. We can't trust my
Oh,
memory on any of
yeah.
this.
No, I know what you're saying, right? Because I've been back. I've gone to Graham Crackers. I mean, I haven't been there in a long time, but I remember having I've seen that new location. I didn't
Okay.
realize it was a new location. I thought the store was just like completely like
No,
gutted and redone or whatever.
it
But
literally moved like 20 feet further east. That's all.
gotcha. Yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah.
more open than it used to be.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, not anymore, but that's
Oh,
neither here
right.
nor there.
When did you start Challengers?
2008, March 31st,
Nice.
2008.
Nice.
Yeah. And I want to say I ran into you at New York Comic Con in 2009.
Sounds right. Yeah.
You were DC then.
Yeah.
So what I used to do back when I would go to the shows, and I don't travel for shows anymore, but I'll do local ones and stuff. But
Hmm.
Chicago, as you well know, is completely blessed with an insane amount of comic professionals and comic talent,
Hmm.
and more all the time. And at 2009, I drove out there with Greg Titus, Jenny Frizen, my buddy Steve, and his friend Cynthia. And who else is in our car? And anyway, I was trying to introduce. Oh, and my buddy Ben Goodman, he was there too.
Hmm.
I was trying to wait. Am I? You know what? I'm mixing stories, but nonetheless, that show I was trying to get Burnham and Jenny in front of editors,
Hmm.
and I remember introducing you to Chris Burnham, like, hey, this is Chris Burnham. You know, he's a up and coming Chicago guy. Blah blah blah. And you got to admit that Burnham has a very unique and distinct style.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna jump back several years to I did the same thing with Scotty Young,
Hmm.
and Scotty was doing like his mainstream superhero style, but he was very very urban, very like graffiti based, and he was a lot like, man, I should never bring up people I can't remember the names. The guy who did Batgirl for a while, who had a very similar style.
Damian Scott.
Yes, he was a lot like Damien Scott. Thank you. That's exactly who I was thinking of. And Scotty was he'd done some stuff for Marvel, but he really wanted to get into Bat books. He wanted to do something for DC. And at the time, I knew some people at DC, and I'm like, hey, you know, Scotty Young's really interested in jumping over. Like, do you guys have anything open? And look, I'm not a broker. I'm not an agent. I'm just a guy that knows a lot of people. So
Yeah.
all I was doing was talking to my friends.
Mhm.
And I don't have the ability to get people work, but I can champion people that I like. So
Mhm.
I put Scotty's name and work in front of some people, and they're like, we just don't get it. Like, Scotty is not for us.
Right.
And, you know, obviously Scotty is huge now.
Yeah.
But he's got a very distinct and unique style. And there was a time period where DC had a very specific house style,
Oh,
which
yeah.
is a very good style.
Sure.
You know, like your Ivan Reis or your Eddie Barrows, like people that have a very solid superhero structure and they do dynamic pages, but a lot of the newer artists were all starting to look the same way.
Yeah.
You know, like now it's hard to distinguish a Jason Fabok from a David Finch kind of thing. But anyway, at that point, I was trying to get Burnham work, and I remember talking to you, but I don't remember if I was talking to you about Burnham. I think he was standing there, and it might have been like, "Hey, this is Chris Burnham," but I don't think like we gave you, because you know I made him make up he might have done it without my insistence. I don't. As I'm telling this story, I find I'm inserting myself in it too much. Like, I don't get all this credit. But I remember because
Had
at
had
that
he
time,
done Officer Down by that point, or
he'd done Nixon's Pals, and
okay?
Officer Down was coming next.
I see. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I don't. Were you in the Superman office at that point?
yeah. I was.
Okay.
Most of my time at DC, I was there at the Superman office. Yeah.
Okay. Well, the moral of the story is that eventually Burnham did a whole bunch of
Yes.
stuff, specifically with Grant Morrison.
Grant. Yeah,
But I'll tell you what, it's a lot better for your career if Grant Morrison champions you than if I do.
yeah. He's yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
they're kind of a name in comics.
Yeah, they kind of have a bigger pull than Challengers does. It's really weird. Huh. I mean, I've accepted it a long time ago. That's fine. I would take Grant Morrison's word over mine, even if it was to my, like, if they were talking to me, they would make me doubt what I was saying.
Right.
So yeah, for sure. Especially because I keep getting names wrong. Yeah. And then at that same show, Jenny got an offer to do covers for a company, but the offer was well below what she needed to do to value her time, and cut to now where she's doing a ton of work for that company for, let's just say, a little bit more money than they offered back in 2009. But again, it's no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I think I worked with Jenny soon after that on. She did some covers for the New 52 I Vampire series.
Oh yeah,
yeah. That was a million years ago at this point.
I remember her discussing some of the process for that.
Oh yeah.
But also, like, I can't take any credit for that because I did not introduce you to Jenny at that show. I don't think.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, this is not about me saying, look at all my friends who are doing great, like yourself. I just like to think that one of the things you said earlier, and it really applies to Chicago creators especially, everybody helps everybody.
Yeah.
People don't look at each other and think, you're my competition. Everybody thinks, oh man, this person is great, and they make me feel like I don't do good enough.
Right.
That's the great thing about creatives. Everybody's so self-defeating, like you were about yourself before, that nobody ever thinks, oh, they're taking work away from me. They'll just think, man, I should be better.
Yeah, it's true. It's very true.
So you started as an assistant editor, then at DC, did you bump up to editor? Yeah. And also, this is the kind of stuff that I could have done research for, but I'm like, no, I'll just ask him.
Yeah. Started off as assistant, then associate, then editor. Had a great time at DC. Worked mostly on the Superman books. Fun books like Thunder Agents that nobody read. It was great. And then,
but you guys, didn't J.G. Jones do a bunch of covers for those? Those are fun.
No, Thunder Agents was a terrific experience, and I got all kinds of phenomenal artists to contribute to it, but just nobody read it.
Yeah.
I got Frank Quitely to draw the first cover, and like George Perez, it's Mateers, Ryan. So like there's all kinds of people had
all-star names. Yeah.
Yeah. They had like a lot of affinity for the property, so they were willing to make some time for it. But
did anyway. You though? Because Thunder Agent seems like it's before your time.
It was. No, definitely. So I had to read up on it. DC had published all the archives by that point, so I was able to read up on it, and I think having some distance from it helped too. I think that helps in general, like to not be too attached to a property that you're trying to like help tell news stories about. It's why I started off with the X-Men, and they're still the characters that I kind of like love the most. I don't necessarily want to work on the X-Men books because I feel I'd probably be saying like, all right, have Nightcrawler's not acting like how he did in 1995. He needs to be that's not good. That's not a great way to handle books. So
I was just talking to Brian Garside, the guy who's behind Manage Comics, who is our subscription management system, and he was talking about the kids he liked as a kid, and I really think that all longtime comic readers just have the most personal affinity for the books you read when you were a kid.
Yeah.
Like you with X-Men, like you were just saying with X-Men, and yeah, like I will till I die if I'm at a show or past long boxes, I'm digging through to find out whatever Silver Age or 70s Marvel books they have there that I don't have. I'm like, I want them all. I don't care what they were. I just want them. That's my heyday. That's my time period.
Yeah. It's the good old days. Yeah.
Being a Nightcrawler fan is tough because they've done so many major changes with him, with his spirituality and his religious beliefs and killing him and bringing him back. But of course, every X-Man now is alive forever,
Right,
or
right, right.
until not. But
Yeah.
yeah, when I think of Nightcrawler, I still think of the Dave Cockrum design. I think of the
Yeah.
John Byrne art, and I think of, he's Elf and he's a swashbuckler. That's what I think
Right.
of.
Right. Yeah. Same here. I mean, like Alan Davis's version is one I think of, but yeah, he was basically the same then with
Yeah.
a whole lot of difference to him then. Yeah. Yeah.
Man, and I think I'm getting off topic, but I think the nostalgia for that kind of what we grew up with is really what keeps us so invested, because we want that feeling, but with today's comics.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I guess you can always kind of be chasing that, and then when you find it, it's pretty exciting, and there's always the promise of it in the next month's batch of books, right? And yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, at what point did you move on from DC?
Well, when the day that DC announced, Bleeding Cool broke the story that DC was moving its offices to Los Angeles, and then 15 minutes later, we got a staff-wide email saying, "Oh, we're moving to Los Angeles." And this was like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Like, it was very clearly something that was rushed because Bleeding Cool broke the story. Anyway, so later that night, I emailed Tom Brevoort and said, "Hey, you've got any open jobs over there?" I knew Tom a little bit.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to. I wanted to stay in New York.
Yeah, of course.
And thankfully there happened to be an opening at Marvel. It worked out, so I started over there a while before DC actually moved. I think DC was there probably in New York for like another year or two, maybe. But
okay.
Yeah. But
do you think that night there would have been a rush of other Marvel editors being like, "Hey, DC, do you have any openings?" Just because of the announcement? Wow.
Yeah, probably so. I don't know. I definitely think that I don't know that I would have gotten it if I had acted fast and emailed Tom that night. Somebody else could have gotten that slot. So
I do want to shout out to Tom Brevoort, because his Substack is just so entertaining.
Oh yeah,
his the Man with a Hat. Dow and I have been talking about it regularly on our podcast recently, and just because we both got into it like just a couple of months ago. Mm-hmm. Such a wonderful historical dive into comics and his behind the scenes stories. And he's been in comics for so long now.
Right.
Like, I just hit 32 years of being a comic book retailer. Mm-hmm. And it's the more retailers I meet, the more people I find who've been in it that long or longer, Mm-hmm. So even though Challengers will be 15 years old next year, I still feel like we're a new store, like we're a new modern store.
Yeah.
But there's been, hundreds of stores that have come after us. Mm-hmm. And mm-hmm. I never feel like the old guy in comics, Mm-hmm. I mean, I will look at other retailers and be like, that is an old guy in comics. But comics always make me feel young and exciting, but I also love the history of it. So Tom's stuff is so great.
Yeah. Tom's the Substack's amazing, and just Tom's terrific. He's such a great well of knowledge, but he's also just the best at the job too. He's the gold standard. He's Tom's, like, I think it's hard to, because he's still as good as he is now as he was 25 years ago. So
yeah,
like, there's not time, like, he feels like you're saying, like, contemporary and not like part of the old crowd, but like, so there's not that distance for everybody to be like, oh, he was really great, because he's still there now. But like, I think, I don't know what I'm trying to say. He's one of the all-time greats, and there's not anybody else like him. He's very good at his job.
I also feel like he and I are fairly similar age-wise, and to me, it's like, oh, that dude knows way more about comics than I do, and I've been doing this for 30 plus years.
Sure.
He's just better at it. But I mean, obviously our jobs are completely different, but the encyclopedic knowledge of what we've read in the past. That's the thing. Like, I'm not a comic scholar in any way. Mm-hmm. I just remember a lot of stuff that I've read. Mm-hmm. Just, it gets harder as time goes by because there's so much more stuff. And there were so few comics as kids that we just poured over those books over and over again. Mm-hmm. But okay, so what roughly what year was that when you jumped to Marvel? I don't remember
I think that was 2013.
Okay.
So yeah, almost 10 years ago.
God, isn't that weird? It feels like That's not that long, but it's almost 10 years.
Yeah. Really.
And did you start as an assistant, an associate? I know
Uh,
that Marvel has different terminology for their levels. I learned that from Tom's Substack.
yeah, no, I was an editor when I started there. It's a lateral move. I was an editor at DC, then editor at Marvel, um, and started working on like Thor and some of the Avengers books and the Loki Agent of Asgard series and stuff that I'm still in the Marvel Heroes corner of the
Yeah.
Marvel line of books. So yeah.
You got to be part of Jason Aaron's Thor run.
Yes, I was incredibly lucky to kind of parachute into that. I started off on that like with like issue 18 of God of Thunder,
Okay.
and it was terrific to see that series out, and then to have a front row seat to the Jane Thor story.
Yeah.
That was such a great experience, and it was just really special, and it was a lot of fun, and um, yeah, got to kind of revisit it just a couple of months ago. Actually, Marvel was super cool and sent me out to the premiere of the movie along with Jason Aaron and Russell Dowderman. So
Nice. Did you get to like dress up, do the red carpet?
yeah. It was a great experience. It was a lot of fun,
Man,
and it was just
that's
wild
that.
to see the comic just leap to the page that directly. It was something else.
Yeah, right. I mean, as comic fans, we've already. I assume you're like myself, where we've made peace with Hollywood a long time ago, knowing that whatever movies are going to be, they're not going to be 100% faithful to what the source material is. But
Yeah,
that's okay. They can be their own separate thing.
right.
And just to see Gore the God Butcher or the Mighty Thor, things that didn't exist
Right.
10 years ago or what have you, already
Yeah.
be on the screen, that's got to be amazing.
Yeah, it really is. It's something else. Same kind of deal. I did a Loki book at Marvel a couple years ago, Vote Loki, where Loki
Yeah,
ran for president, and then all of a sudden that character ended up having a small role in the Loki show, and
right.
it was super weird. All of a sudden, there's all this merchandise everywhere, and yeah, it was strange. Same outfit, same lapel. It's real weird when stuff like that bleeds over, kind of into the quote unquote real world.
We still sell Vote Loki buttons.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just, I mean, not even from a personal validity stake. It's just like, oh, this is so cool. Like not
Yeah.
even like, oh, I worked on this, which obviously I never did, so I don't get to experience that aspect of it, which I can only imagine is just so rewarding. I mean, the best part of what we do is when we can recommend a book to somebody that they've never heard of, then they come back and want the second volume, or they just say,
Mm-hmm.
this was so great.
Mm-hmm.
And like to
Mm-hmm.
me, that is the pinnacle of my profession.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea of being able to see things like that on the screen is beyond what I would even imagine you would ever have thought would be a facet of your job.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, that's just kind of like a cherry on top. I mean, the real fun of the job is what you're talking about, like making those connections and like having being a part of a run that readers really connect with and remember and reread for the rest of their lives. Sometimes
Yeah.
I remember I started reading. Y'all pushed Alias, Bendis and
Oh
the
yeah.
Max book back when I was shopping at Graham Cracker, and that run like is forever one of my favorites, and I don't think I would have gotten it otherwise if you guys hadn't been pushing it.
Nice. And
Same with like Jeffrey Brown's comics. That's I first got into those shopping at Graham Cracker. You guys had like a whole display for him in the back room, and
yeah.
I remember talking to you about
What
it.
used to be the kitchen in that old house. Yeah.
Oh, is that what it was? Oh,
That's what it
funny.
was. We were very lucky with Jeffrey Brown because he was going to school at the Art Institute, so he would come by, and there's a couple of artists who did the whole, hey, I'm making like my own books. Do you want to sell them? So we started. I started buying them. I say we, but that was a me thing. I started
I
buying
figured.
stuff.
Yeah.
But and like to this day we still do consignment books and local books at Challengers. 80% of them never move.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to dedicate space to it, but it's also hard to say to somebody, no, your books aren't good enough, we won't stock it in the store.
Mhm,
and the joy that people get from seeing their books on a shelf, but also the joy that we get of like, man, this Jeffrey Brown guy with Clumsy,
mhm.
all that stuff is so good. Sean Dove, who's done Brobots for Oni, and he's doing a Godzilla book next year for IDW. He's done a bunch of stuff. Same thing. He brought in a book about riding the subway. He's like, hey, I have this book called Subway, and it's my eternal regret that I never kept one of those for myself.
Oh,
Lily Carr, who
oh, yeah.
yeah, same thing. She was I like Lily Carr and Sarah Beacon are two people whose work I boxed up and sent to Chris Staros at Top Shelf, saying, "Hey, you need to look at these two." And he published Tales of Woodsman Pete from Lily Carr. Like
Oh, nice.
that is one of the
Great.
only times I was a direct result of something else. But Sarah Beacon, who did at the time like the Ouija interviews, and now she's had huge success with Let's Make Ramen and Let's Make Dumplings. These cookbooks. The illustrated cookbooks, which are great, but I felt super bad because Top Shelf did not work with her.
Fight there,
yeah. But I mean, you try. But yeah, like, and that's the thing. Like specifically the Chicago comic scene is when somebody finds a book, they want to show everybody. And are you familiar with Ryan Brown from God Hates Astronauts and 8 Billion Genies and Curse Words?
Yeah. I've worked them a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. I know he's done covers and stuff, and he's done like shorts and anthologies and things. 8 Billion Genies, by the way, is phenomenal. If you're not reading that book is.
I haven't picked it up yet. I love the premise, but I need to. And I like Charles a lot. I need to check it out. Yeah.
One of the neat things people don't know about that book is that every book is a multiplier of 8. So the first issue is the first 8 minutes of this thing happening. And then the next issue is the 8 hours, and then 8 days, 8 weeks, 8 months, and it just keeps, it extrapolates out for the 8 issues of the series. But we had no idea who or what Orion Brown was.
Yeah.
But it was the aforementioned Chris Burnham who came in one day and said, look at this 24-hour comic called God Hates Astronauts. You've got to meet this guy. You're going to love his work. And he did.
Really cool.
And Ryan Brown is a guy that we have had so much success with, but it's because Chris Burnham brought it to our attention.
Nice.
And that's what everybody does is bring it. And then that's what you're doing as well. As an editor, you're bringing these books to people's attention.
Sure. Yeah.
Man, this whole episode is just a love fest to comics and comic publishing and comic selling. I can't help it.
There's like two other, like the Chicago creators I think of, like Jeffrey Brown, and then that, I started getting into Paul Hornschmeier's work and Anders Nilsson's work. And I've in my time at Marvel, I've hired Anders to draw something in the issue of Squirrel Girl, and I've hired Paul to draw something in an issue of Immortal Hulk. And Jeffrey's the last one of like the three in my head that I need to complete.
You have to get on it, yeah.
I need to get in touch at some point.
I believe in you, Will. I know you'll get it done.
Yeah.
We had when Marvel did Strange Tales the first time around. We partnered with Chicago Comics and did a joint signing with Becky Cloonan, Jeffrey Brown, Paul Hornschmeier, and Michael Kupperman.
Oh, cool! Great.
So it was great to have everybody for that book, and that book is just such a love letter to indie comics, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, it's weird to say indie comics or mainstream comics because they're all comics. Like, if they're in the shop, they're mainstream as far as I'm concerned. But,
right.
Yeah. And also, let's not forget that you worked with someone named, I think it's pronounced Chorp Zadorsky. I'm not entirely sure how it goes.
Yeah, Chip. Yeah.
I always say Chorp Zadorsky, but that's because that's what he put that in an issue of Sex Criminals. So I'm not making that up. I'm stealing that from him directly. Also, his Substack is the #1 most entertaining Substack.
Absolutely.
Just for outright humor.
Yeah.
So much fun.
Yeah.
I keep saying Substack. I guess I should just say email and newsletter, but it's the same thing. But yeah.
I feel like
it's
Substack.
so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chip's the best. Chip's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chip's, somebody else that I was a fan of as a reader, just remembered him from back in my college days. And then when I was at Marvel, reached out to him about doing something, and then snowballed, led to Howard the Duck. And then boom. I mean, that guy was headed into comics no matter what. He's got so much talent.
Yeah, but I mean, like I can say that about, Burnham and Jenny Frison and Scotty Young. They didn't need my help, but it's still nice to be able to say, oh yeah, I thought that too. And now the rest of the world agrees.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I literally just had someone else that you've worked with that I wanted to point out, and I forgot who that was. But just doing Squirrel Girl,
Yeah.
what it's still a perennial seller for us. Such a fun book, such an amazing. At that time period, we were doing the best with at Challengers for Marvel. We were doing the best with the books like Squirrel Girl,
Hmm.
like the Dan Slott and Mike Allred Silver Surfer, like the things that were not necessarily immediately connected to the continuity of the day.
Hmm.
We loved Jennifer Lopez. I'm sorry, what? Where did that come from? Oh, I know.
We
I
all
know.
love Jennifer Lopez.
You know what? Man. So anyway, I meant to say
She's off the
Dennis
market
Hopeless.
now, though. Dennis
I
Hopeless,
meant
yeah.
I meant to say Dennis
his
Hopeless.
Spider-Woman series?
Yes.
Oh, I love that
And
Spider-Woman series.
and I don't. Why did? Okay. Anyway, that's that's so dumb. I have to leave that in there because A, it's stupid, and B, there's no reason for it. But I meant Dennis Hopeless's Spider-Woman series, and we missed that costume so much. It was such a great costume.
Yeah. Javier Rodriguez. Yeah.
That's why I was
I fell
trying
in
to
love.
say
I fell in love
Javier
with Javier.
Rodriguez.
I fell in love with Javier on that book, and I've tried to work with him as much as I can ever since.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
he's
Tom keeps
phenomenal.
stealing them from you.
yeah. He had History of the Marvel Universe, but then I stole him back for 2 Defenders series, and we're talking about something for the next project. We'll see what happens.
And also, that Defender series is a perfect example of what I'm saying. Completely weird, so much fun, and not tied to Axe Judgment Day.
Right.
You know, it's something that can be read, and I think we now have more subscribers for Defenders Beyond than we did for the first series.
Oh, good, nice.
But just because word gets out, and it's a combination of Al Ewing is a guy who knows current Marvel continuity better than any writer working today, and it's stellar art.
Yeah. They're a terrific team. I love working with those guys.
So, without naming any specific titles, how often is a book that comes out something that you've said, hey, I want to do, you know what, I'm just going to say Forbish Man. I want to do a Forbish Man series. I'm going to build the creative team and assemble it and move it forward. Or is something like that more of a Marvel edict of, you know what, we need to do a Forbish Man book. Will head that up.
It's about half and half.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, at DC, it was all, this is the book you're doing. That's one of the things I love. In my time at DC, DC's a pretty different company now, but
sure.
But that's
I don't know what changed. I don't know what the difference could be. I don't know why it's different now.
Yeah, but Marvel's just always been great in that way. There's a lot of freedom and trust, and you can kind of come up with ideas and characters that you want to do something with, and half of those don't make it, but the other half that do. It's a lot of fun to run with. So yeah.
What is a run from either Marvel or DC, and not counting Thunder Agents, because you already said that you're just particularly proud of either how it came together or the work that was being done, or something that you look back and go, yeah, I did that?
Well, I mean, you already mentioned it. Squirrel Girl is like my forever favorite comic series that I've worked on. That was the best. That was just a great book. It was a great experience working with that talent on that book, and it was great. The fan response to that book, just everything about that experience was just wonderful. And yeah.
That book is worthy of being on your tombstone.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, if that's what people remember you for, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
Do you think that I don't know, I'm stretching with this, Will, I really am, but the fact that Ryan North is now writing Fantastic Four, do you think that's because you were able to show Tom what he's capable of when he was doing Squirrel Girl, or is it purely just Ryan North being that good?
Yeah, I mean, Ryan's just brilliant, and I think that everybody sees that. So I mean, I may have put him on Tom's radar, but it's not like it's the same deal with Chip. Like they would have gotten there at some point another way. So yeah, I mean that's all Ryan's just pure skill and Tom's wisdom to hire people with skill.
Ryan specifically, I think he's come a very long way from the guy that did dinosaur comics.
Yeah.
Or that guy that got stuck in that pool on Twitter.
Right. Yes. Infamous experience in the hole there. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, now I think he will also always be Squirrel Girl, Ryan North.
I don't know.
Regardless of how good this FF series is going to be.
I mean, I've heard a lot of the plans for that. They got a lot of great stuff. We'll see what happens there. But yes, I hope that people always do forever associate him with Squirrel Girl, because that's the best for sure.
Yeah. And also that gave Eric Henderson the spotlight as well.
Yeah,
well deserved.
Yeah. She's phenomenal. I got a chance. They've done a book together, a graphic novel together, Trouble and Other Stories. I'm botching the title, but I think it's called Trouble, and it's coming out in April. And I got a chance to read an early copy of it, and it's so much fun. It's such a good book, and it's nice to see them still collaborating together on a new project.
I was lucky enough to have dinner with Erica Henderson at a C2E2 after. It wasn't just me and her or anything. It was a group of people, but in our little corner, it was Kyle Starks and Chris Schweizer and Erica Henderson, because Erica and Kyle are good friends.
Right.
And we had heard that she was going to be doing like a 3-book series from, I don't know, Random House or somebody, like right after she left Squirrel Girl. Mm-hmm. And we're like, oh, how's that going? And she's like, I have no idea. Like apparently it never got written or something. And we're like, oh no, we were so looking forward to this, and we didn't need to worry. Right. There were so many other Erica Henderson projects coming down the pipe. Like, we got Dracula motherfucker out of her, which is great and sells all the time. It's an easy horror recommendation right off the bat.
Yeah. I got the name of that graphic novel wrong. It's called Danger and Other Unknown Risks, not Trouble.
Okay.
Ryan and Erica, April.
Got it.
It's great.
Yeah, looking forward to that.
Erica's wonderful. She's so great and talented. It was fun getting to collaborate with her on Squirrel Girl.
Man, you know what? I'm just jealous of all the creators that you've worked with, but it's the kind of situation where that you like. Let's say they all came into Challengers one at a time. I would just be like, oh my God, I love your work so much. Thank you. I wouldn't be relating to them as a human being, or like, oh, I love your take on nuclear fusion. Let's talk about that. I'd just be like, no, I think you're so great. Will you sign our wall? Okay, thanks.
Yeah, right. I mean, I get that way sometimes working with people still. And then the reality of deadlines kicks in, and I just view them as a problem that I need to get solved. So, yeah.
Do you ever like feel bad, like, I have to chase down, let's say, a Chip Zdarsky because he's missing a deadline, or he needs to make this change, and I have to be the bad guy to tell him to do it?
Yeah. I mean, Chip is another reason that Chip's crazy. He's also super professional. Never really had problems getting anything out of Chip on time. But yes, absolutely feel bad sometimes having to breathe down people's necks, especially when I know that like all the other stuff they've got going on, and it's probably something that Marvel's been running behind on in the first place. So hate asking people to hurry up. But
well, it's for the greater good.
Yeah.
And we comic fans, we appreciate the work that you do. So thank you for that.
Sure.
Do you have enough time, what with being a full-time comics editor, being a husband, being a father, do you still read comics for pleasure?
Yes, I do, but it's definitely less than when I was just a fan and a reader. Usually, like if I've got time at night, then I need to read a couple of scripts that have been turned in that week. What I read, I don't keep up as much new stuff as I wish that I did, or I wish that I could make time for. I more often now am reading like old stuff. Like I'm currently rereading Top 10. So
good.
Yeah. But
did you read Kaiju Max? Speaking of Xander Cannon,
I read the first volume of that, and then I always wanted to go back and I read the individual issues, and then I was like, that mistake of saying, oh, I'll get the rest of it in trade, and then I never got around to it. So
it's so worth your time, because he ramps up that story, the emotional just punishment that everyone goes through, characters and readers, and the fact that this is like a 6-arc story he's telling with different aspects of prison, and oh my God, and it pays off so great. There's so many, like his whole treatise on death row is amazing, but just that was originally supposed to be drawn by Ryan Brown too. So, but I think it's
Xander
better
was
served.
Write it, and then Ryan was going to draw it.
Yeah, even in the back of the first hardcover, they do like, hey, here's Ryan's character designs for what it was going to be. Yeah, but that's such a weird book, because it's so bright and happy looking and colorful, and you have to say, no, kid, you can't read that. That's not that it's there's not bad language or things. It's just way over your head.
Yeah.
So do you have a polls list, or do you
No,
have a?
there's a comic store here in Forest Hills that I go to, but I don't have a pull list there. I need to set one up. That would probably ensure that I get out there more.
Or just ensures they're going to be calling you to say, "Where are you?"
True, true.
Do you get to keep up with the competition's books, or you don't really see it that way? It's just comics are comics.
I mean, I don't keep up with them because I view them as competition, but I do in the sense that I'm just a fan of comics and want to read
Sure.
whatever's good. Whatever publisher it is. If it's good, I want to be checking it out.
I think that comics publishing is beyond the point where it really matters who's publishing what outside of Marvel and DC. There used to be a point where if it had the Image eye on it, it was going to sell better than if it had the Oni on it, or a Dark Horse book or whatever. But now, because creative teams are so interchangeable with all the publishers, it doesn't matter where the book comes from.
Yeah.
And it's especially like that for there's no reason for stores to separate books by publisher anymore, because
Sure.
Modern readers don't know who the publishers are.
Yeah.
And why should they?
Right. Yeah.
I think that we are at a point where there are better comics than ever before being published.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that with full reverence to my childhood and the books that I read. I also know a lot of those books do not hold up, but they hold up in my heart. One of my sayings to current subscribers is that there's a lot of good books being published now, but because there's so many books, you can kind of only afford the great books.
Sure. Yeah.
And for every time I say there's better comics now than ever before, there's also worse comics now than ever before.
Yeah.
Because there's just more comics.
There's more content, like the same way with television. Like, there's so many shows and a lot of good shows, but it's like you can't watch all the shows out there. You can't read all the good comics out there.
Yeah, and
it's
don't you
a nice
feel
problem to have?
It is, but don't you feel like not left out, but like behind on your shows when people are like, "Oh, are you watching She-Hulk?"
Yeah,
and you're like, I just finished Paper Girls. I still have Sandman to go.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But again, nice problem to have. I mean, it was easier to keep up with stuff, 20, 25 years ago. But like, I don't know. It's a good problem to have for sure.
Yeah, until you look at your streaming bills. Also, I think that you and I are in a slightly better position because we have access to more comics to read than
That's true.
a lot of people.
Yeah.
But one of the things that DC has been great with lately is previews. And I think now that previews for the retailers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think now that PRH or Penguin Random House is Marvel's distributor,
mm-hmm.
they're picking that back up too. So that is extremely helpful. One of the things that doesn't work from a specific challenger's point of view is that they both use box accounts to Box is the website that has all the PDFs on them. So when you log in, it'll generate your store name and your store account code across every page of the PDF. So in case it leaks, they know who did it. Because it was retailers leaking preview books that destroyed the system in the past, where we would get actual physical copies, first looks and sneak peeks.
Yeah.
It was literally one specific retailer who will remain nameless, but happens to be in Denver. But because
that information, what you will.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But because there's the different box accounts, and we have like the main challengers at email address goes to both Dow and I, and now store manager Molly Jane. So like we have different login credentials for each publisher, but like I only have the DC ones and Dow only has the Marvel ones. So it's a huge extra steps for me to get Marvel books and for him to get DC books. But anyway, that's nobody's fault but our own, and we are very happy that there are still previews for us to read ahead of time, so we have an idea of what's coming out and what we can publicize and make people read. Anything coming down the road that you want to specifically make sure people are aware of? And aren't you glad I did not tell you these questions ahead of time to give you a chance to think about it and to have answers ready? That's not how I roll, Will.
Well, we're doing a fun miniseries, Wakanda. It's launching in November, where it's like an anthology miniseries each
Nice.
issue spotlights like a different character from Wakanda, as by different creative teams each issue. And there's a backup running across the whole thing. It's like a history of the Black Panthers, by Evan Narcisse and Natasha Bustos. That's really great. So it's a nice package. Like you get some good fresh talent in the lead stories, and then a nice little bonus of like a good retelling of all the Panthers in the back.
Nice. I like Natasha Bustos' art.
Yeah, she's terrific.
Is there extra pressure to have more content based off of movie characters when a movie is coming out?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely want to have lots of product available, because that's when the general interest in the character is going to peak, right? I mean,
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like right now we're with the Black Panther movie coming out in November. There's a lot of Black Panther projects on my desk right now, and that's it's kind of a normal business model, I feel like, and it's not pressure. It's just kind of an opportunity to kind of explore different things. Yeah. But yeah, and we try not to, like, in terms of like content, like follow what the MCU is doing, but it's it's good to necessarily to take advantage of the extra attention that their TV shows and movies bring.
Yeah, like we said before, if you're reading Black Panther currently, that is not what you're going to see on the movie screen, but it shouldn't be.
Right.
You want something different. You want more stories with those characters.
Yeah, you're right.
If you could pick one Marvel character who doesn't have a movie right now, who would you want to see on this movie or TV show? And I know that's a difficult question because there are more all the time. Like, who would have ever thought we'd be talking about a Wonder Man TV show?
Yeah, definitely.
But I love it. I love the fact that there is.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a good question.
Well, Dal is desperately waiting for any type of Power Pack movie or TV show. So if you want to like sprinkle that around a little bit. A couple of years ago for his birthday, I wanted to try to get him some original Power Pack art, and I reached out to June Brigman personally.
Oh, nice.
And she's like, "No, I'm keeping it all because they're eventually going to do a Power Pack thing, and I'm going to be ready." And I'm like,
Smart.
"Man, good for you! That is a heads up play."
Right.
Yeah, and you deserve every dollar you get from that art. You deserve it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great book. She's a terrific artist. Yeah. I don't know. I still like. I love Squirrel Girl and Howard as characters, and they've both had little, brief on-screen time, but not enough. I think there could be a lot with both of those characters. It would be a lot of fun.
I agree, and I think that it's even it's an unfair question to ask, just because all we have to do is wait, and it'll happen, regardless of who it is.
Yeah.
Man, I never thought we'd already have had a Moon Knight TV series.
Yeah.
Did you do you get to watch these things? I don't mean in advance. I just mean in general. Like, do you keep up on all the Marvel properties?
Yes, but like, there's too much. There's like, I still have to watch like the last episode of both Miss Marvel and Moon Knight.
Okay.
but it just snowballs because She-Hulk starts, and I'm really eager to watch that show. And so, yeah. But yeah, I keep up with it for sure.
So there was a quick little Moon Knight anecdote we have, and there was a scene that took place in Chicago. Obviously not filmed in Chicago, but it's supposed to be Chicago. But it was at Mark's mom's Shiva, and because he was trying to get away from it, he reverted back to Steven out front. And Steven's then on the phone talking to his mom, and he doesn't know where he is, and he's looking around, and he says, "Oh, I see a sign that says Milwaukee. I'm on Milwaukee Avenue." And we laughed out loud at that scene because the street that they were on was so unlike Milwaukee Avenue in Chicago. Yeah. It was so far away. Like, man, they have no idea what Milwaukee is like, right? Haha, whatever, Hollywood. Well, it turns out that the producer's assistant, and I legitimately forgot his name because I'm a terrible person, used to live in Chicago and used to shop at Challengers. And he was given the opportunity to name that street, and he remembered that Challengers was on Milwaukee. We're on Western and Milwaukee, but he remembered the Milwaukee part, so he named that street after the store.
Huh, that's
and
awesome.
Here we are mocking it openly when it was for us. And we found this out because I've got a friend in the industry who excitedly messaged me one day. He's like, "Did you see that scene in Moon Knight? That was for you." I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "Who is that guy? Who's this person?" And he gave me the name.
Right.
I'm like, "I don't remember them."
That's funny.
But it would have been like 2010 and whatnot.
Yeah.
But yeah, so not only is it because of us, it's the scene that we openly mocked.
You're mocking.
Yeah, which I think is the most challengers thing that we can do.
Sure. I had a weird bit of overlap with the MCU stuff, and that a couple years ago, my son was in daycare, and I picked him up one day, and there was a film crew across the street, and I thought they weren't shooting, so we were standing there, and I was telling them about, like, oh, that's the camera, that's the boom mic, those are the actors, blah blah blah, and then a couple of months later, my wife and I were watching I think it was the second season of the Jessica Jones Netflix show, and all of a sudden I paused the screen and I told my wife, I said, "That blur back there, that's me and Ollie." And I had no idea that they were actually filming it, and that it was Jessica Jones. But just all of a sudden, I was like, I could tell I knew that was two blurs was us. And I
how perfect, how meta.
Yeah.
You were describing what a TV show filming is like in a TV show.
Yeah, right.
And it was Jessica Jones, a book that you love.
Yeah. And
man, that's the best.
Yeah, it was pretty wild.
That is a great story. I love it.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that happens in comics all the time.
Right.
It's so great. Will, I want to thank you again for taking time out of your day to be part of this podcast.
Sure.
I literally, as I told you, I'm like, I'm just using this as an excuse to catch up because we haven't talked in years. And for anybody who's in the store, I will point out to where Will signed the wall when he was in it years ago. Still there, right behind the counter.
Nice of you. Yeah.
Is there any?
Next time I'm in Chicago, I'll definitely gonna head up the store and say hey again.
Yeah, I'll buy you dinner. We'll do something.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to promote? Any of your social media or anything? Any plugs you want to give?
No, I'm on social media, but I mean, it's I don't want to plug myself to social media. You guys,
fair enough.
Just pick up the comics. Buy 5 comics. Buy 5 copies of every Thor, Hulk, and Black Panther comic that Marvel puts out.
Perfect. We'll do it. Will, thanks again, and everyone else, thanks for listening.
And keep reading comics.
Yeah, we did it. All right. Technology is never really my friend. So in preparation for this Zencastr interview with Will Moss, I did a test run with the equipment that I hadn't used for a while with my brother George a week before Will and I recorded. It was only a few minutes long, but I told George that I would keep it and put it in the episode. Only I can't find it. I may have deleted it by accident. So my apologies to my brother George Brower for messing up his few minutes of assistance on this podcast. So to make it up for him, for the last time this year, here's a fundraising plea for his Alzheimer's 5K. If you're a longtime listener, you may have remembered that every fall, every September, my family and I do an Alzheimer's 5K in memory of our mother, Frances, who died after a decade-long battle with the disease back in 2020. We've been doing this for a while now, and our team is called FOURFRAN. That's FOURFRAN. And the last couple years, it's just been me and my brother actually participating. And our sisters work behind the scenes and in the tents and help out the people that are actually participating in the walk. My brother is co-chair of the event, and this is his second year doing it, and because of that, his duties, which he does for free because he believes in this cause, and he's the one who inspires all of us to be part of this, because he's busy with actually participating in the planning and all of the behind-the-scenes things that I have no knowledge of and deliberately keep myself away from, he doesn't have time to fundraise, and you have been very generous to me, and I am well above my fundraising goal. So if you knew about this from being in store or having read about it in our weekly newsletters, or if you're just interested to learn more about what this is about, where the money goes, why we're doing this, and if you want to donate, if you could kindly go to fourfran.com, which is our team page, and if you scroll down just a hair, you'll see under the team roster, both George and myself listed, And if you'd be so inclined to donate, please donate under George's button. You probably know George. He's been at every Free Comic Book Day, most of our events. He's always dressed in Challengers gear. He's always way more outgoing and enthusiastic than I am at these things. He's a better personal face for Challengers than me. And he is the person that got me into comics all along. So I am doing this for my mom, but also trying to show him that everything he does not go unnoticed. So if you want to, go to forfran, that's FOURFRAN.com, and click the donate button after George's name. If you want to just go and read his story or read about the walk or about the potential cure for Alzheimer's, you can do that as well. We are fairly confident we will see, if not an outright cure, major breakthroughs that can change people's lives in our lifetime. And I feel like we're close. And of all the money donated, well, I was trying to look on the website to find out, but I think for every dollar you donate, 72 cents of it actually goes to research, which is a lot higher than a lot of other organizations. Anyway, thank you for listening to this. Thank you for listening to the podcast. Thank you for supporting Challengers. And thank you for visiting forfran.com.
This has been Contest of Challengers. Thanks for listening. Keep reading comics. Challengers is located at 1845 Northwestern Avenue in the Bucktown neighborhood of Chicago. 773-278-0155. Keep up to date with new releases and events at challengerscomics.com. Like Challengers Comics on Facebook, follow @Challengers on Twitter, and help fund this podcast at patreon.com/challengers.